Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or whether you've downloaded the widely available and 100% free Extra Sports 1300 app. I would say a veritable cornucopia of sports topics today, but let's be honest, it's going to be mostly basketball as free agency is opened. Free agency is opened in the NHL. So basketball, hockey, that's what we'll be splitting our time on today. And I would love to hear from you. I'm sure you got some opinions on the last 24 hours. You could text or call into the show 719-247-1313. To start the show, I would like to run back some audio. It's a little bit of old audio. This is Josh Kroenke at the end of season press conference for the Denver Nuggets. So just a couple months ago, this is what Josh Kroenke had to say.
You know, I said it 2 years ago at a press conference when I was doing it by myself. And I don't know how many people took me seriously at the time because we hadn't actually won it. But when Nikola Jokic is on your roster, you're going for it. You have the best player in the world, and you have a responsibility to him and the group to try to go for it.
You go for it. Not just that you go for it. You have a responsibility. It's not just your desire to, quote, go for it. It is your, quote, responsibility to go for it. That's what Josh Kroenke said. And yet, here we are, second straight offseason with the Nuggets losing a key piece to their rotation, as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope signs a 3-year, $66 million deal with the Orlando Magic. Now, Bruce Brown signed with Indiana for a similar amount of money. I believe his number, average annual value, was actually $500,000 higher than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But let's just call it similar money that the Denver Nuggets have allowed Bruce Brown and now Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to walk away from them for. To me, it was fine that the Denver Nuggets let Bruce Brown walk. That's a lot of money for a bench player. As important as Bruce Brown was to the Nuggets' title run, he was a bench player. This is different. This is a member of arguably the best starting five in the NBA. And you let him walk for $22 million? That's not a significant, that's less than I thought he would sign for. I thought Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was going to go for at least 25 somewhere. $22 million? Nuggets can't match that? So this leads me to believe that at least one of the two parties was basically done with the other one. Right? That they just weren't willing to opt in for longer. So let me ask you, which party do you think it is? Do you think it's the guy that like 4 months ago said Nuggets for life, or this one?
You know, and all the stuff I've looked at with lineup stuff and everything, Christian Brown's one of the best net rating guys in the league, as is KCP. So I think if he's a step into the starting lineup, like probably projected, I think, we'll be okay.
Which one do you think it was? Do you think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was done with the Denver Nuggets? He's like, I'm out of here. I want to spend more time at Disney World. Or do you think it's that guy that said a week ago, less than that they would be, quote, okay if they lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope? You tell me where the lack of motivation to keep Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in Denver comes from. Now, there are reports that the Nuggets tried to keep Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Okay, so maybe they weren't done with him. But were they willing to go over that dreaded second luxury tax apron to re-sign him? And people are making a big deal about state taxes. Okay, so how much makes up for it? An extra $1 million a year? Extra $1.5 million? The Denver Nuggets were not as serious about bringing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope back as Josh Kroenke's "we have a responsibility to go for its" comments would make you believe. The Nuggets are deathly afraid of the second luxury tax apron. Deathly afraid of it. Meanwhile, doesn't seem to be bothering Boston too much, does it? Derek White just re-upped for the most money he possibly could for Boston. They blew right past that second apron. But the Nuggets are afraid of it. And even if they went into the second apron, there are two things that you are still allowed to do despite being in the second luxury tax apron. You can sign your own free agents and you can sign your draft picks. Tell me, what is the problem with going into the second apron? I thought this was the plan for the Denver Nuggets, right? Bring in these drafted guys, keep signing them. Those are their big additions. Keep what you have, which is arguably the best starting five. That will take you into over the second apron, but you could still retain Aaron Gordon. You could still retain Jamal Murray. They're your free agents. And Christian Brown and Peyton Watson and Deron Holmes and all these guys that you value so much, you could sign them all. It's not a hard salary cap. You wonder why it's not called a hard salary cap? Because it's not called a hard salary cap. It's not a hard salary cap. You're allowed to spend over it. But the Nuggets are unwilling to do it. Not that they can't, they don't want to. Even though the two most important things that you can do, retain your own free agents and sign your own draft picks, the Nuggets can still do. But they weren't willing to match a 22 or exceed if they needed to make up for no state taxes in Florida. They got outbid by Orlando. One offseason after being outbid by the Indiana Pacers. This is a championship winning team, folks. And they are losing guys the last 2 years. I know that Adam Silver's second apron the aim was to create this, right? Because there's an alternate timeline where this doesn't exist and somehow the Denver Nuggets turn into the Golden State Warriors. Like, it's not that far-fetched. Right? If there aren't punitive actions taken by the league to try and scare off teams from spending an infinite amount of money, then super teams would exist. And that's not what Adam Silver wants. I understand it's punitive. I'm not trying to make it out to be nothing. But you have the juxtaposition of the last two NBA champions. One says, how much does it cost to retain Derek White? We're retaining him. And another that you would think the Nuggets organization would implode if they went over the second luxury tax apron. It'd basically be a tripwire to bring down the entire organization. Meanwhile, across the country in Boston, they're not even batting an eyelash at it. We won a title with these guys. We're keeping him. That's not the mentality in Denver. And to me, that's a problem. I understand there are restrictions. But I'm telling you, years from now, when Nuggets fans think about the fact that Nikola Jokic, a 3-time, maybe even 4-time at some point MVP, has one title to his credit, they're not going to look back and blame Adam Silver. They're not going to say, oh gosh, the NBA just cracked down so much, that second luxury tax apron. No, they're going to blame Calvin Booth. I can get on board with the idea of continuously drafting guys, creating a pipeline of young talent to replenish the depth on this team. The depth. Not to replace a member of the best starting five in basketball. Christian Braun is not better in any way, shape, or form than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And nothing that the Denver Nuggets do from here on out can you seriously look at them and say that they are better than what they would have been if they would have just retained Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for, in the grand scheme of things, not that much money. It makes it so much worse. It's such a worse look for the Denver Nuggets when the Boston Celtics did not hesitate to retain the services of Derek White. They didn't even hesitate. Where's the responsibility that Josh Kroenke spoke of to maximize the window where Nikola Jokic is the best player in basketball? He said it was their responsibility to go for it. What about the last 24 hours tells you that the Nuggets are going for it? There would be no greater show of we're going for it than keeping Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Second luxury tax apron be damned. We're keeping this guy because we want to win another title. It is our responsibility to win more titles, to continuously pursue titles. What has happened the last 24 hours tells you a very different story. And I don't know if it's that the Kroenkes aren't willing to spend. I don't know if it's Calvin Booth's supreme belief bordering on arrogance that every guy he drafts is capable of one day starting for the Denver Nuggets, because this is not about if they sign Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, they could not sign Aaron Gordon. That's a false choice. If you remember the night Drouin Holmes was drafted, something that Calvin Booth said stuck in my head. He believes that Drouin Holmes is capable of one day being a starting 4 in the NBA. What position does Aaron Gordon currently have on the Denver Nuggets? Aaron Gordon has a player option for next year. Assuming they get the deal done, extension done with Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon would be the next member of this team that is due for a raise and a new contract. And Calvin Booth just drafted a guy that plays the same position Aaron Gordon does. I don't know if they're scared of the second luxury tax apron or Calvin Booth believes that all these guys he's drafting are just going to supplant everybody in the starting lineup around Nikola Jokic. But just keep that in mind. Fast forward a year from now, if Aaron Gordon opts out and ends up leaving, remember that Calvin Booth, the night he drafted Drouin Holmes, may have pointed to the fact that he would one day take over Aaron Gordon's job. Is this fulfilling the responsibility that Josh Kroenke talked about? You tell me. 719-247-1313. It does not seem like it to me. Just getting going on this Monday edition of the show. Coming up next, NHL free agency open today. A few items of business have been taken care of by the Colorado Avalanche, and I would say in comparison to the news cycle around the Nuggets, it's much more positive. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. The Rocky Mountain State Games is Colorado's largest sports festival with over 12,000 athletes competing in nearly 40 different sports. Registration open now for athletes of all ages and skill levels. Go to RockyMountainStateGames.org. So last night it was the start of NBA free agency. Today at 10 a.m. it was the start of NHL free agency. And the work that Chris McFarland put in today, I think if you're an Avs fan, you have to be pleased. Maybe even more than that. I am quite surprised. That's not strong enough. I am shocked that Jonathan Drouin is coming back to the Colorado Avalanche for a year and $2.5 million. Shocked. I thought for sure that Jonathan Drouin was going to want, if nothing else, set aside the average annual value, term. I thought this guy was going to want multiple years, right? Which is the thinking of a player like Jonathan Drouin, right? You go to a place, you rehab your image around the league, you're productive, and then you go and you cash in with a new multi-year deal that probably pays you more than $2.5 million. But he volunteers, he chooses to come back to the Colorado Avalanche for 1 year and at a dollar figure that the Avalanche can easily fit within their cap, even as tight as they are against the cap. Jonathan Drouin has and should take a step up in your book in terms of favorite Avs players, because he did the Avalanche a huge solid today. Now, I have believed that the Avs could find another Jonathan Drouin. I pointed out Jeff Skinner, who did indeed get bought out by the Buffalo Sabres. That could be the next guy, right? And this mold, Andrei Burakovsky was one. Valeri Nichushkin was one. These high draft picks don't quite live up to expectation. They're available at a bargain rate. Avs bring them in, stick them next to now the MVP of the National Hockey League, plus Mikko Rantanen, and get production. Right? I thought they could do that again. And again, even identified the exact player they should try to replace Jonathan Drouin with. But you know what's better than finding Jonathan Drouin's replacement? Getting Jonathan Drouin back. There's no risk to it. At least venturing back out in the market, there is a little bit of risk here. So you bring back a guy that you know was productive. You know that your MVP loves playing with. And you get him for, again, a year and $2.5 million. Clearly, the feeling from Nathan MacKinnon towards Jonathan Drouin is mutual. Because you can't tell me that Jonathan Drouin couldn't have gotten a longer, more lucrative deal somewhere else. So this is a big get for the Avs, or a big retention by the Colorado Avalanche to get Jonathan Drouin for a year. Now, the Avs did lose something. Sean Walker, who they had acquired at the deadline, he is gone. They bring in Calvin DeHaan. Walker goes to Carolina, who lost Brady Shea to Nashville. Got to talk about what the Preds did today. Talk about that in a little bit. They did lose Sean Walker, but they bring back DeHaan, or they get DeHaan. It's essentially a swap, considering where DeHaan previously played. But this is your third D pairing. And yes, you lose Duhaime. You lose Yakov Trenin. They bring back Kivi Ranta. So you look at everything that has happened surrounding the Colorado Avalanche. They got the big thing right. Okay, Jonathan Drouin, even if you can find someone else, it's still important to find someone else. He is a top 6 forward for the Colorado Avalanche. These depth guys, third D pairing, fourth liners, third liners. I'm not saying depth's not important. I'm just saying it's secondary. As opposed to the Denver Nuggets, who are losing their top line talent and trying to boost their depth. The Avs got the biggest thing that they could get right today. They got it right with a huge assist from Jonathan Drouin. Now, what the Avalanche are this year, how serious of a contender they are for a Stanley Cup, we know still very much lies with the futures of Valeri Nichushkin and Gabriel Landeskog. Okay, so bringing back Jonathan Drouin is a win for them. But the most important things they can't do anything about right now. And that's what this offseason for the Avs has been. Just what you can figure out. They re-sign Casey Middlestat. They bring back Jonathan Drouin. They find an immediate replacement for Sean Walker. Chris McFarland over the weekend made a traded out of the first round in order to get more draft capital, kind of replenish the coffers a little bit. So Chris McFarland, everything that is within his power to address, he is addressing. But you don't know what the Avalanche are going to be, how good they're going to be, until there's resolution with either Gabriel Landeskog back on the ice or Valeri Nichushkin and his whole situation being figured out, and probably both. So it's still a dark cloud hanging over the Avalanche franchise, and they are not winning a Stanley Cup if Jonathan Drouin is the only top 6 winger they acquire this offseason. Right? But are they acquiring Gabriel Landeskog? How does he look? And what's the future of Valeri Nichushkin? Is he the acquisition, quote unquote? Or do they move on from him? So those things are the biggest things. Unfortunately, McFarland can't do anything about either. But he brings back Jonathan Drouin, immediately replaces Sean Walker. Don't forget, Kovalenko will have a bigger role with this team. Logan O'Connor will be back from injury. And they did this without even having to give up Ross Colton. Right? The whole idea was, well, they got to move Ross Colton to create flexibility in order to bring back Jonathan Drouin. They didn't trade Ross Colton, and they have Jonathan Drouin. As bad of a 24-hour period as the Nuggets are currently having, the Avs have had about the best, 5.5 hours that you could ask, given that they are completely handcuffed by Landeskog and Nichushkin. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. I've set the table Nuggets lose KCP. Avs bring back Jonathan Drouin. How do you feel about those two situations and where these two teams go from here? There have been some names bandied about when it comes to the Nuggets, excuse me. Get to those in a little bit. Coming up next, though, we have reached the final four of our Goat of Goats tournament. Ali versus Gretzky, Jordan versus Woods. Today, it is Muhammad Ali versus Wayne Gretzky. Talk about that and take your thoughts on NHL and NBA free agency next on Extra Sports 1300. Happy birthday, America. Celebrate big with a chance at $5,000 in the Red, White, and Win giveaway. Head to extrasports1300.com to enter this national contest for your chance to Red, White, and Win $5,000. Sponsored locally by Colorado Salt Cave Wellness Center. Mind, body, balance. We have gotten to the final week of our Goat of Goats tournament. It's been a lot of fun so far. Now looking to close it out strong over the next 3 days. Today, our first semifinal matchup will be between Wayne Gretzky and Muhammad Ali. Wayne Gretzky is the all-time leading scorer in National Hockey League history. He is a 4-time Stanley Cup winner. He is a 9-time most valuable player, 8 ahead of Nathan MacKinnon. And he is 10 times led the league in scoring. Muhammad Ali finished with a record of 56-5. He knocked out 37 dudes. He is the first fighter to win the World Heavyweight Championship on 3 different occasions and defended that heavyweight title 19 times. Some of the biggest events in boxing history have his name on it. Now, as I size up this matchup, I cannot make a cultural impact argument on behalf of Wayne Gretzky. What Muhammad Ali did to stand up for what he believed in, even though it cost him 3 years of his prime, is a level of commitment to something bigger than sport that virtually no one in our tournament has on their resume. Okay, so if that's what it is, I can't make an argument for Wayne Gretzky. If you say the most important thing to you, your goat of goats, would be someone who had an impact on the world outside of sport, then that's fine. That's why we do this. But if you'll allow me, at some point, I have to look at the athlete and what they did within the confines of the sport. Right? This is a tournament between athletes who were, by your vote, the best in their sport. And we have come to a point in this tournament where we have, outside of Muhammad Ali, 3 of the most dominant athletes in the history of sport. Three athletes that were so much better than everyone else they stepped on their field of play against, or rink, as it were, with Wayne Gretzky. When you have a resume like Wayne Gretzky, I'm not saying it's more important than what Muhammad Ali did in opposition to the Vietnam War. I'm just saying it is an amazing resume within the sport. And at this juncture, it would only take a Gretzky, a Woods, a Jordan to be able to knock off Muhammad Ali. We've gotten to this point. Where I got to look at what someone did in the sport and say, what Wayne Gretzky did in hockey. Again, doesn't trump the importance of it, but wins this tournament. That wins this matchup, this particular matchup. It does. And there's so much conversation right now around Alex Ovechkin closing in on the all-time goals record. And that is a hallowed record that Wayne Gretzky holds. No doubt about it. But you want to talk about someone, and I love Ovi. The dude just scores goals. That's all he does. Especially at this point in his career. I think every single one of the pucks he gets on his stick, he immediately fires towards the net. Okay? And that's fine. That's his prerogative. If you're closing in on Hank Aaron's record, just swing for the fences. I understand. But the record that we don't talk enough about is the points record. Okay? Gretzky wasn't just scoring goals for himself. He was setting up others to a number that Alexander Ovechkin is not even going to sniff. He's not even going to come close to Wayne Gretzky's points record. He would essentially need from here on out to match his career point total in order to catch Wayne Gretzky. He is that far ahead. Sidney Crosby is still 1,000 career points behind Wayne Gretzky. And after Ovi and Sidney Crosby, the next two guys on the list that are active are 37th and 38th all time. You know, with Babe Ruth, his records have fallen multiple times, right? How much do we talk about these other athletes whose records are eventually surpassed? And we debate the era in which they did it and all this other stuff. Wayne Gretzky's records still hold. And there's an outside chance that Ovi doesn't even pass Wayne Gretzky in goals. And then on top of it, 4 Stanley Cups, 9 MVPs, 10-time Art Ross winner. The NHL might be this even more of a niche sport that's played in Canada and on the Eastern Seaboard, if not for Wayne Gretzky. When you have such an incredible impact on your sport, when you have some of its most hallowed records in a stranglehold. Even we talk about Connor McDavid and what he was able to do in these playoffs, which is amazing. He still couldn't catch Gretzky. And I would have been quick to point out the next day, if he had caught Gretzky, that Wayne Gretzky got the all-time single playoff record for points in 7 fewer games than Connor McDavid got it. The amount of work that this guy put in, it only this kind of a resume could knock Muhammad Ali out of this tournament. But I feel like the other 3 semifinalists that are left have that kind of resume. Now, if I stacked up Ali versus Woods or Ali versus Jordan, we'll see. But that's not the matchup. It's Gretzky. And I have to go with the great one. I do, because something that has happened throughout this tournament is that it's caused me, so I'm not saying the same thing over and over again, dig deeper into these, the numbers, the records, all this kind of stuff. And I've actually grown to have an even greater appreciation for how good Wayne Gretzky was. in diving deeper and deeper here, trying to find new angles to talk about him. I'm voting for Wayne Gretzky. If Muhammad Ali's opposition to the Vietnam War and him being put behind bars and being banned from boxing for 3 years in his prime is something that you're like, you know what? It matters. It's what I want to see in the GOAT of GOATs, is that they transcended their sport, that they impacted the world outside of just being great at their particular sport. Go for it. I can't argue against it. But at some point, I look at these, resumes for Gretzky, for Jordan, for even Tiger Woods. I probably put Ali over Woods. I don't know that I would have Muhammad Ali advancing past Gretzky or Jordan. But you vote how you wish. I am just one vote, like you. Or one vote per social media platform, as it were. That poll will be posted shortly on our social media accounts at Extra Sports 1300, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Tomorrow, we'll see whether it's Gretzky or Ali who will await the winner of Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods. 719-247-1313 if you want to get into the Gretzky-Ali conversation, or you would like to talk about the way free agency has gone for both the Avs and the Nuggets. And I will get into league-wide, because this first day of free agency, even though the NBA was a little bit slow to begin, has gotten really juicy, and the NHL today has been phenomenal. So we'll get into league-wide stuff, build our way out from the local angle as the show progresses. Speaking of free agency and what the Nuggets did not do, which is retain the services of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Steve G says, looks like the Nuggets are fine with one championship, and that wastes Joker's prime, which is fleeting. And I don't want to give away everything I'm going to discuss in the next segment, because I'm going to get into the Russell Westbrook stuff. But again, you have the last two NBA champions in the Nuggets and the Celtics, who are faced with almost exact same financial predicaments. And handling them in a very different way. And time will tell who is right. But you can't tell me that Derek White is so much better than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Let's not do this. Let's not do the thing that we so often do when a player leaves one of our local teams, and it's kick them on the way out. Oh, well, that guy wasn't that good to begin with. Don't do that. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Derek White are pretty comparable. Right? Pretty comparable. The Boston Celtics said, how much can we pay him? And the Nuggets said to KCP, we can only pay you this. Two very different ways of looking at it, faced with the same financial hurdles. Both could be in the second luxury tax apron if they extended these players, and Boston did it without hesitation. There wasn't even a question. And the Denver Nuggets were outbid by the Orlando Magic. And now, guess who has unquestioned the best starting five in basketball? There was an argument, even after the Celtics won the title, who the best starting five in the NBA was. It's not a question anymore. It's not. The Nuggets don't have that. And they are going to make some bets in other areas. And they'll try to sell you on the idea that they're still going for it. They're just going for it in a different way. And there is a very recent, very local example of what I think the Nuggets are trying to do here. And I'll point it out. You could judge for yourself whether you believe this will work. But the Nuggets clearly afraid of the second luxury tax apron, or feel like it's not necessary for them to go into it. And the Boston Celtics blew right past it in making sure that there's a difference, right? You have to be careful when you are saying you want to keep your window open, when you want to sustain success. That is great. And there are things that you have to do in order to make that happen. But you have to be careful that you aren't so focused on extending that window, keeping that window open for as long as possible, that you're actually not good enough to actually win another title in that window. And the Nuggets right now are teetering on that, where they seem to be so focused on making sure that they have a chance to compete every year of Nikola Jokic's career from here on out versus actually having another title. The Boston Celtics are saying, we got to worry about the long term for sure, and we want to keep this window open as long as we have Tatum and Brown. But right now, we have the best team in the NBA. We want the best team in the NBA back next year. So it's these differing arguments. Do you want to extend your window out longer, but never be as good as you were when you won that first title and take your chances? Or do you want to take a team that just won a title and say, run it back? And we have a case study here. Nuggets versus Celtics. We'll see whose way works. 719-247-1313. We'll break for the top of the hour. Coming up next. So no KCP, but there are some names that are being mentioned with the Denver Nuggets that could replace him. But I'm here to tell you that they are not replacements for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. We'll get into that conversation next on Extra Sports 1300. Drive Time Sports on this first day of July. Free agency now open in both the NHL and the NBA, and there's much to discuss. Even though I guess NBA free agency is now officially 24 hours old, 1 day old. NHL just started this morning, but plenty to discuss, and I hope to be able to discuss it with you. 719-247-1313 is both the text and the phone line for your convenience. So the Nuggets lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He signs with the Orlando Magic, 3 years, $66 million. This exercise I am about to ask you to participate in is a bit easier when you have visual aids, but let's try it. Player A has averaged 10 points a game on 46% shooting, 2.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists. Player B averaged 11 points a game on 45% shooting with 5 rebounds and 4.5 assists. Which would you rather have? You would take the better numbers and the 1% dip in shooting percentage, wouldn't you? Player A is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Player B is Russell Westbrook. Now, it's a dirty trick on my part, of course, because those are offensive numbers. Those are a starter that is the 5th option in the NBA's best starting 5 versus a guy that is allowed free reign for a second unit to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. So it's not apples to apples. And we're not even talking about the defensive end of the floor. But just know that this will not be the first time that somebody will bring up Russell Westbrook's numbers versus Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's. But it does illustrate what Calvin Booth is trying to do. In no universe is Russell Westbrook, at this point in his career, a better player than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. What Calvin Booth is trying to do here, whether this is his belief in his drafting ability, whether it's the Cronkies unwilling to spend over the second luxury tax apron, whatever the reason why, they clearly don't want to go over it. So what they are going to try and do is approximate the impact of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I laid out last week why Christian Brown is not a straight-up swap for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as much as Calvin Booth is trying to sell you on that idea. He is not better than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But he is a good defender at fewer minutes. You bring in a Russell Westbrook, and now you account for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's offense. You boost the bet the Nuggets are making. Our starting 5, our top 5 guys are going to get a little worse. Whether they'll admit it or not, they know their starting 5 is weaker with Christian Brown than it was with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But we will in turn make the bench better, and that will all even out. Who does this sound like? 1 year ago, right around this time, the Colorado Avalanche went out and brought in Miles Wood, Ross Colton, Ryan Johansson, and Jonathan Drouin. None of those guys are as good as Nazem Kadri. Because that's what they were chasing, right? JT Compher didn't really live up to Kadri, and JT Compher went to Detroit in free agency. Chris McFarland said, I'm going to get these lesser players become deeper, and top to bottom, our lineup is going to be just as good. It's just that the distribution of points is going to come from a wider spread lineup. Okay? This is what they tried to do. Fast forward to the trade deadline. What did Chris McFarland end up doing? Trading for Casey Middlestat because Ryan Johansson did not even come close to living up to what he was brought in to do. Jonathan Drouin, he lived up to his part of the bargain. Colton Wood certainly did. Ryan Johansson didn't. But yet, just that one weak link hurt the rest of the team. So Chris McFarland went out and he added Casey Middlestat. I think we're going to be feeling the same way about the Nuggets here in a few months. If this Westbrook thing goes down. And it's not done because clearly Zeke Naji is not good enough for the LA Clippers. But if this goes down and they put Christian Brown in the starting five and Russell Westbrook on the bench, you will be looking back when the trade deadline rolls around and like, yeah, Nuggets need something else. There's not a substitute for top line talent. There just isn't. The idea of Russell Westbrook coming to Denver should be looked at. Let me do the blind taste test one more time. Player A, 10 points a game on 43% shooting, 1.8 rebounds, 3.1 assists. Player A is Reggie Jackson. Russell Westbrook is the Nuggets' second attempt to replace Bruce Brown because Reggie Jackson was not that guy. Right? It's like the Avs now with Middlestat. Now take into account Drouin, Middlestat, Wood, and Colton. Right? And whether that approximates what they have lost in Nazem Kadri. And still might not do it, but it gets you a whole heck of a lot closer than Ryan Johansson did with the rest of those guys. If Russell Westbrook was being held up as the replacement for Bruce Brown and an upgrade, a better shot at it than Reggie Jackson was, I'm all about it. In fact, I've been on this Russell Westbrook to the Nuggets thing for weeks. Not reporting that it's going to happen. I'm just saying I like the idea of Russell Westbrook on the Denver Nuggets. Everyone's acting like it's an unpopular take. I don't think it is. You give Russell Westbrook the second unit, him as a bench player. That's better than Reggie Jackson with that second unit. So if it's just Russell Westbrook is going to replace Reggie Jackson, how can anyone think that's a bad idea? Now, you might not feel like Russell Westbrook is as good as Bruce Brown was, but it gets you closer, doesn't it? Russell Westbrook is not a replacement for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Christian Brown is the replacement for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Judge them accordingly. So the Nuggets bench could be better next year, but their starting five is not going to be as good. But this is the bet that the Nuggets are taking, and it's too early to tell. We don't know for sure whether this is going to work, but clearly this is what the Nuggets are trying to do, again, as opposed to the Boston Celtics, who said, we're not going to worry about bringing in somebody else. We're just going to keep everybody, regardless of price. The Nuggets are trying to approximate the losses that they have sustained. Two problems with it. One is that the most important thing are those 5 guys in the starting and closing, however you want to look at it. Your top 5 guys are the most important guys. It's not your top 4 and then your 7th and then your 5th. Your top 5 guys. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was one of those top 5 guys. On paper, the Nuggets would not be better with Russell Westbrook over Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But then you also have to think about it and say, okay, Russell Westbrook is finally the replacement for Bruce Brown, but now you're losing Christian Brown from your bench. So is your bench unit actually better? You're taking a guy that makes your bench better and putting him into the starting lineup, which he won't be as good, and then bringing in somebody to for it. We have to see what else the Nuggets do. Right? We are just over 1 day into free agency. There are other moves to be made, and I expect the Nuggets, they don't even have Westbrook done yet, so who knows? Right? Given what else has gone on around the NBA, especially regarding Klay Thompson, like until a deal is done, don't assume anything. Russell Westbrook may not even end up in Denver. But just as the hypothetical, plugging in Russell Westbrook, I think it does do more towards replacing a guy you lost 2 off seasons ago than replacing the guy that you just lost. Which I am arriving at the same conclusion. The Nuggets are not better today than they were yesterday, which is a team that was not as good as the team was 1 year ago today. The Nuggets are getting worse. How much worse can they afford to be? That's what the Nuggets are testing here. How much worse can we be before we are 3rd, 4th, 5th best in the West? To say nothing of the much improved East that also houses the new reigning NBA champions. It's not a pleasant place to be. It's not a fun exercise. Calvin Booth may be having the time of his life trying to figure all this stuff out. I look at it and I say, bottom line is the Nuggets are worse. Are they so much worse that they can't win a title? I'm not there. Are they so much worse that they're not the favorite in the West? Yes. That team resides in the state of Oklahoma. And, oh, by the way, Minnesota is probably better than the Nuggets too. The margins are thin, people. They're thin. It only takes a loss of a KCP, a loss of a Bruce Brown to take the Nuggets from unquestioned head and shoulders above everyone else in the West to, well, they're battling for the 1 spot. Well, they lost that, and now they're the 3rd best team in the West. How much more are they going to allow this roster, this talent, to slip before we can't even seriously discuss the Denver Nuggets as a title contender? And that sounds insane because they still have Nikola Jokic, but really, is it Calvin Booth's plan to next year replace Aaron Gordon with Deron Holmes? Get so worried about extending your window that you never strike while the iron is hot and try to go after it when you're still better than everybody else. That's what Boston's doing. We think we're better than everyone else. We want to stay that way. Take your thoughts at 719-24-7, 1313. Talk more. We'll stick with the NBA. I do want to get into the NHL, but what's going on over the last 24 hours in the NBA has been very interesting. And I'll get into that next here on Extra Sports 1300. Experience the Switchbacks 4th of July Star-Spangled Fireworks Spectacular in the heart of downtown Colorado Springs. It's the most immersive fireworks show in the state of Colorado. Make sure you're there at 5 to get a special Switchbacks light-up baton provided by Pikes Peak National Bank. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. And just so we're all clear, this is Thursday, July 4th, that we're talking about. I'll be there. Love to see you there. So, stepping away for a moment, we'll get back to the Nuggets and what they're doing in free agency, and I welcome your thoughts at 719-247-1313. But there's a lot going on across the league. And the last 2 weeks, maybe longer than that. I mean, let's be honest, we've been having these conversations regarding a couple of gentlemen for a while now. But the last 2 weeks has been dominated by the fact that the Los Angeles Lakers are prioritizing placating a 40-year-old LeBron James by hiring his podcast co-host to be his coach, by drafting his son, scaring away other teams, telling other teams, do not draft him, and then drafting his son, all to placate him. And how that's not the way that Dr. Buss would have run the organization, and it shows that the Lakers have fallen a bit from the most respected franchises in the NBA. And yet, they still cannot say that they are the worst organization in Los Angeles. Because that title, for now and maybe forevermore, will be held by the LA Clippers. Any team, if they had the ability, would have done what the Clippers did in bringing in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Everybody would have done it. Okay? So that's not what this is about. And it is a little bit of life with the Clippers that it did not work out. Right? That's a bit of bad luck, if we're being honest. Getting Kawhi Leonard after he just carried the Toronto Raptors to an NBA title, and getting Paul George, who that year was a first-team All-NBA guy, were great moves. Great moves. And the fact that all they have to show for it is a blown 3-1 lead against the Nuggets in the bubble and a Western Conference Finals appearance that Kawhi Leonard didn't even participate in to show for it, that's tough. That's where you feel for the Los Angeles Clippers. Because it should have worked to a greater degree than it did. But why all the Steve Ballmer money in the world cannot change them from being the Clippers is what they have decided to do in order to extricate themselves from this position. Kawhi and Paul George did not work. Right? Not that they didn't get along, not that it was a clash of egos or stylistically they didn't fit. It was because mostly Kawhi Leonard was perpetually hurt. So what do the Clippers do? They sign Kawhi Leonard to an extension. And in the process, alienate Paul George. And when it comes time for them to patch things up and say, yeah, I know you were upset that we didn't try to extend you when we extended Kawhi, but here is a 4-year max contract extension because we're bringing back Kawhi Leonard. Why wouldn't we bring you back? No. They would not go to the fourth year. And so they lost Paul George for nothing. They extended the guy who is never available to them, and they let the guy that was actually there and on the court and trying to help the team win, they let him go for zip. No sign and trade, no compensatory picks. Paul George gone to Philadelphia. And so they bring in Derek Williams, which is actually a nice piece. He's not Paul George. But they do essentially what the Nuggets are trying to do. Right? Nuggets lose KCP. It's okay. We'll elevate Christian Brown. We know he's not as good as Pope, but we'll use our savings to make our team deeper by bringing in Russell Wilson. Yeah, that's going to happen a few times. I apologize. Bring in Russell Westbrook and other veterans to be named later, and we'll just approximate the loss of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Well, the Clippers are trying to do that as well. They signed Derek Williams, who I think is a nice piece, and then they use their extra money, because Derek Williams doesn't make the same amount as Paul George, to bring Kevin Porter back from Greece into the NBA. And you may be thinking, I know Kevin Porter. Where do I know that name? He was a highly touted prospect, wasn't he? He was. But he was banished, essentially, it was a shadow ban by the NBA. Nobody would touch him. Nobody would sign him a year ago. Why? Because he admitted to beating up Kaiser Gondrezic. I knew I was going to stumble on her name. Kaiser Gondrezic, the WNBA player, and his former girlfriend. He admitted to beating her. And so no one in the league would want to bring a guy like that on the roster, which I think would be a stance that most people would get behind. So Kevin Porter goes over to Greece. A year goes by, and now he's back in the NBA. At the same time as Kaiser was released by the Chicago Sky in a weird twist of fate. But it's okay. It seems like she's in a good place. She's dating Jaylen Brown now. Why bring back Kevin Porter? Why do that? A year ago, nobody would go close to this guy. And when they say time heals all wounds, I don't know that it's like this quick amount of time. Oh, and by the way, not only did they commit to Kawhi, they also committed to James Harden. So they gave Kawhi what he wanted. They gave James Harden what he wanted, but they didn't give it what Paul George wanted. So they lose him for nothing. And their big answer to replace him is Derek Williams and Kevin Porter. These kind of decisions, coupled with the misfortune of the Paul George Kawhi thing not working out, is why almost no matter what happens to the Lakers, no matter what they do, no matter what length they go to serve the ego of LeBron James, no matter what length they will go to say that nepotism is okay and it is one of our core principles, they will still not be the biggest clown show in Los Angeles. Clippers will still be the little brother, trying to be the big brother and screwing up every step of the way. And I don't care that the Clippers are moving to their brand new building. They're going to be living in a different place. They're still going to be a little brother. And they're still going to mess everything up. Paul George, Kawhi not working out, that's not on them. That's just some bad misfortune that tends to happen with teams that have been historically awful. But what they are doing now, that this is on them. These are decisions they are making, extending Kawhi Leonard, bringing back James Harden, bringing Kevin Porter back from Greece as somehow some kind of an answer to losing Paul George for nothing. And I cannot stress this enough. Nothing. Which is exactly what the Clippers have gotten out of their best offseason in the history of the franchise. Nothing. More failure than success. So, feel good, Lakers. I know you've been kicked around a little bit, knocked around a little bit, and you've deserved it. I'm not taking back my criticisms of the Los Angeles Lakers. They deserve every bit of it. It could be worse. They could be the Clippers. Speaking of the Los Angeles Lakers, I do not agree with LeBron James' passive-aggressive behavior. I do not agree with him applying pressure on the Los Angeles Lakers to draft his son and to hire J.J. Redick and to fire Darvin Ham. But my goodness, the guy actually did something, made some kind of selfless gesture. You did this all for me. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sign for less money. I'm going to opt out. I'm going to sign for less money. All you need to do, and I'm not trying to make LeBron out to be a saint, okay, because he wants them to use the money. Just go out and get another star. Okay? And I'll sign for less. You won't be over the second apron. I'll do what and this is what star players do in order to make their team better, right? They take less than market value so their team can improve. Get Jonas Valanciunas, get Klay Thompson. Just go get somebody. Trae Young, Rob Pelinka gets none of them. Jonas Valanciunas signs with Washington. Washington. The Lakers are losing free agents too. I mean, look at, there's part of me that says, like, if LeBron didn't tell them what to do, if LeBron didn't facilitate things through Clutch Sports, where would the Lakers be right now? Like, part of me wonders it, because LeBron chose the Lakers for non-basketball reasons. Nobody convinced him to come. It wasn't a big get by the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron just said, you know what? I want to live in LA. I want to make Space Jam 2. I'm going to sign with the Lakers. The Lakers did nothing to land LeBron James. Nothing. Rich Paul and Clutch Sports forced Anthony Davis out of New Orleans. Right? Anthony Davis demanded a trade, said he only wanted to go to LA. Guess where he ended up? LA. When Rob Pelinka has been asked to do something that LeBron, and I guess LeBron even called Klay Thompson, but that is on him, right? Like, go get, right now, you don't have to worry about how much money LeBron James makes. Just go get another star, and he can't do it. He can't do it. And so now the report is LeBron's going to take every dollar he possibly can from the Los Angeles Lakers. Again, it doesn't excuse everything that LeBron has done. But the idea of where the Lakers would be without LeBron James. Like this is from the two things can be true world. Right? The Lakers could be doing too much to placate LeBron, and LeBron could be hurting the future of the Lakers by forcing them to hire JJ Redick, by forcing them to draft his son, all this kind of stuff. But also, if not for him, he wouldn't be in LA. Anthony Davis wouldn't be in LA. So it's like everything good that has happened to the Lakers is because of LeBron. It makes me for like a nanosecond go, you know what? Maybe he does deserve Bronny. Like, maybe he does. But then you think about all the other stuff. Right? The Lakers have traded for Anthony Davis, but that was Clutch Sports. So they hire Frank Vogel, then they fire him, then they hire Darvin Ham, then they fire him, then they hire JJ Redick, then they draft Bronny. Feels like they've done enough. But ask Rob Pelinka to do more. Nope. Not without Rich Paul. Not without Rich Paul. So Lakers lose out on Clay. Clay signs with Dallas for less money, reportedly. And people are like, well, he tried. Hate that. Hate that. Well, you can't blame the Lakers. Yes, I can. Why do you think Clay didn't want to go to LA? Clay didn't want to go to LA because it's not a situation that is more set up for success than Dallas is. Oh, but it's state taxes. That's the other thing I've about had it with. No state income tax. As being an excuse on why you lose out on guys or a reason why you sign somewhere. It is absolutely on Rob Pelinka and it's on the entire Laker organization. It's even on LeBron a little bit. LeBron called Clay. Couldn't make it happen. Why? Because the Lakers are like the 5th or 6th best team in the West, and Klay Thompson isn't moving them into the top 3. So sign with the team in Dallas that's already one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the West, and see if you can elevate them a little bit more. So Lakers lose out on everyone. I guess maybe DeRozan's a possibility. We'll wait and see on that. But all signs point to LeBron going, yeah, forget the pay cut. I'm taking every dime. Just another weapon in my arsenal to make my argument that may be the best thing for everyone. Everyone. Is that LeBron signed somewhere else. Better for LeBron, better for Bronny, better for the Lakers, right? Because they need to draft and develop. They clearly can't land any free agents. So they need to draft and develop. Well, you can't draft and develop when LeBron's there because he wants you to win. They think they're in like the medium place. They're in the bad place right now. They're not coming or going. There's no clear direction. It's not good. But, and I cannot stress this enough, they are still not the Clippers. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, a look at the broader view of NHL free agency and one division rival of the Colorado Avalanche that got a whole lot better today. The best pro rodeo cowboys and cowgirls from the U.S., Canada, and Mexico all converge in Colorado Springs, July 9th through the 13th. With over $1 million in payouts, they'll be riding to win. This is where champions and careers are made. The speed, the excitement, there's no better place to be than the NFR Open at the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo. Get your tickets right now at pikespeakorbust.org. I just heard from the folks at the rodeo that it's getting close. Getting close to having none more tickets. So pikespeakorbust.org if you are so inclined. What Tampa did to Steven Stamkos is quite ruthless. It is. So if you haven't heard, essentially, and this was always to try and get Jay Gensel, right? It was a poorly kept secret that the Tampa Bay Lightning were looking to, one way or another, land Jake Gensel, who is set to be a free agent from Carolina. So what they did, and they made another move as they traded Mikhail Sergachev during the draft to Utah, but they essentially lowballed the crap out of Steven Stamkos, the face of their franchise. A big reason why they have the Stanley Cups or have held the Stanley Cups as many times as they did. This guy, if there is a lifer for one organization, I know it's all too rare in today's day and age of sports, but Steven Stamkos sure felt like one in Tampa. And they just offered him pennies. Said, take it or leave it. Because they were all geared up to get Jay Gensel. And Steven Stamkos. And it's not like Steven Stamkos is awful. Okay? He's not what he was. But they offered him the Avs got Jonathan Drouin for more money than Tampa offered Steven Stamkos. I mean, they did him dirty. And his agent was like, yeah, he's going to be a free agent. We're not signing that. Perhaps it works out win-win all around because Tampa trades a third-round pick to Carolina for the negotiating rights to Jake Gensel, and they end up getting the deal done. And Gensel is better than Stamkos. And Steven Stamkos gets to make more money with Nashville. I get it. You don't owe anybody anyone. You owed them the contract that, that's all Tampa owed Steven Stamkos was what their contract said. And this was a contract negotiation. They offered a number that they thought they were comfortable with. Stamkos wasn't. That's the way this works. But this is sports. It's a little different. And it's not even a sports thing. If you were a vital member to your organization, whatever job you may have, and you put in a lot of years, all right, and they would not have the success they had without you. They don't owe you anything necessarily, but you expect a level of treatment. And Stamkos did not get that in Tampa. They were cold. They're like, $2 million, take it or leave it. That's rough for a guy that's meant everything to that franchise and can still play, which makes what Nashville did so intriguing. Because not only did Barry Trotz land Steven Stamkos, he also gets Brady Shea from Carolina, and he lands Jonathan Marchessault, who can join Steven Stamkos and talk about how dirty they were done by franchises that they meant everything to. Jonathan Marchessault was one of those original misfits, Conn Smythe winner, helped bring them their Stanley Cup, and they were just like, bye. I get it. It's cold business, but sometimes there are some people that you just think should be treated a little bit better out the door. So, Preds, I think they've had the best start of free agency, no? If we want to talk about teams that have moved the needle within the first day of free agency, Nashville has to be at the top of that list. And I find what they're doing to be quite fascinating because Barry Trotz is a tough, defensive-oriented, right, kind of guy. Nashville, for a long time, has had that kind of mentality, even though, he hasn't been there this whole time. You figure it's the perfect marriage, right? Barry Trotz with the defensive-oriented team. Well, he brings in Andrew Brunette, who is most famous for helping Florida win a President's Trophy, and Florida saying, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, we'll go with Paul Maurice. So Nashville brings in Andrew Brunette, who is a more offensively minded head coach. And then Barry Trotz surrounds him with a highly skilled, really good offensive defenseman in Shea, Steven Stamkos, and Jonathan Marchessault. Preds did really good work today. Really good work. And you look at the balance of power in the West. Yes, the Nichushkin Landeskog thing still hanging over the Avalanche, so they're kind of an incomplete grade because we got to wait and see. But Dallas lost quite a bit. Winnipeg did nothing. Their big trade deadline acquisition, Sean Monahan, signed with Columbus because he saw what Johnny Gaudreau was going through and was like, that looks like fun. Let me join you. And now here's Nashville making some serious gains. Central Division is going to be really interesting this year. Love what the Preds did today. Love what they did. And I don't hate that Tampa got Gensel, again, because they got the better player. In the wash, they got the better player. But just doesn't jive with how most organizations treat somebody that's meant as much to them as Stamkos is meant to Tampa. But as I survey the landscape in the NHL, there are quite a few teams that I like what they did. I like what the Avs did, and I'll talk about that after the top of the hour. But no one, I think, moved the needle more on this first day of free agency than Nashville. And they're at the big boy table, right? Dallas, Colorado. I think Winnipeg, you still have to have in that conversation. Nashville's there now, right? They weren't really last year. Now they're there. So just makes it all the more imperative that Chris McFarland figures out a way to deal with this Valeri Nichushkin situation. I don't know if there's an answer for him, but he's got to try to find it. Because, Nashville's on the come up for sure. And Dallas is still really good. Take your thoughts on NHL free agency, 719-247-1313. I would like to, if I could, I'd like to eliminate one team from Stanley Cup contention next year already. Yes, I'm doing this. Can we go ahead and eliminate Edmonton? Can we do that? They re-up Corey Perry. The ultimate bad luck charm. Yeah, sure, you'll get to the Stanley Cup final, but you're going to lose. Corey Perry going back to Edmonton. Still waiting to see what happens with Leon Draisaitl. I have a feeling that it's not going to be resolved this offseason. If they're planning on dealing him, it won't be done this offseason. If they decide to sign him into an extension, they can probably do that tomorrow if they want to. But yeah, no Stanley Cup for Edmonton next year, so you'll have to look at, Vancouver or Calgary or Winnipeg or somebody else, Toronto, to potentially end Canada's drought. Because if you sign Corey Perry, you're serious about going to the Stanley Cup final, you're not serious about winning it. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll reset with the three stories that are driving the show. All local. Couple Nuggets stories, one Avs story. Still another hour to go. Get in here. 719-247-1313. Hello there. Welcome in. Drive Time Sports on a Monday. Glad to have you. Welcome to July. June flew by. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, or whether you're watching the show on YouTube and on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Got you for another hour. Love to converse with you via either the text line or the phone line. The number both the same for your convenience. 719-247-1313. A few stories that I think you may want to talk about happen to be what's driving the show today. All righty, let's start with this for story number one.
Throws out of it over to Casey for three. Yeah! Let's go, Denver! Let's go! Denver leads it by 7 with 4 minutes to go.
And they would hang on to win their only NBA title so far. Altitude Radio on the call. The guy that hit that shot, the guy that was a key piece to last year's championship team, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, has gone the way of Bruce Brown, and that is somewhere else, signing shortly after free agency opened yesterday, 3 years, $66 million with the Orlando Magic. I seem to recall a governor of the Denver Nuggets not that long ago telling me and you that it was not just the idea that the Nuggets would, quote, go for it as long as they had Nikola Jokic. That governor of the Denver Nuggets said it was their responsibility to go for it as long as they had a now 3-time MVP and one of the best players of his generation on the roster. Something about actions and how much more audible they are than words, something like that. I'm not quite getting that saying right. This doesn't feel like going for it. Maybe I'm missing something. What am I missing? Because all I see is a team that doesn't want to spend into the second luxury tax apron. They're afraid. They're either afraid of it or they are so arrogant that they don't think they need to. That they can just replace players that leave. They would just have this constant pipeline of replacements. So one way or another, they're not spending into the second luxury tax apron. They're not spending past it into it. I don't even know the correct verbiage to explain the second luxury tax apron, but the Nuggets want no part of it or don't think they need to have any part of it in order to, quote, go for it every year that Nikola Jokic is around. Meanwhile, just down the road, right? How far is Boston from here? Like 300 miles? It's not that far away. Meanwhile, the Celtics are laughing at the second luxury tax apron. They blew right through it today by signing Derek White. And oh, by the way, they also signed Jason Tatum to an extension. Clearly, the second luxury tax apron is not as scary as the Nuggets are trying to make it out to be. So the Celtics are essentially running it back, while the Nuggets, for the second consecutive postseason, lose a key player of their championship rotation. And look, I was okay with them losing Bruce Brown. I thought that they could replace Bruce Brown. Okay, but Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a member of the NBA's best starting five. And I think they're different, but the money is the same. The Nuggets could have matched this offer. They should have matched this offer. Even if they matched it and he still wanted to go because of state tax reasons, then pay him an extra $1 million or $2 million. You're supposed to be going for it. How is letting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope walk and plugging in Christian Braun still going for it? It's not. The Nuggets are trending in the wrong direction since winning a title. But reinforcements may be on the way. That is the subject of story number 2.
Here comes Westbrook. He's on his way to the rim. The layup. There's history for Russell Westbrook. 25,000 career points. He becomes the 25th player in NBA history to do so.
That is AM 570 LA Sports with the call. The big rumor is that the Denver Nuggets would like to bring in Russell Westbrook, and by golly, Russell Westbrook would be interested in coming to Denver. And I am all about this. I like this. I do. But please don't misconstrue my eagerness for the Denver Nuggets to acquire Russell Westbrook as this is the replacement for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Christian Braun is that, and Christian Braun alone should be judged on whether next year he is as good as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. What Russell Westbrook is essentially the Nuggets' second chance at replacing Bruce Brown. Reggie Jackson did not work. Now they bring in Russell Westbrook, and I actually think it just might work. You saw it for a long period of time last year work in LA. Give him the second unit with all of these young guys and just let him do his thing. Just let him do his thing. The Nuggets bench can be better. And this is the bet that the Nuggets are making. Our starting five won't be as good. Our 5 most important players will be somewhat weakened, but we'll improve the bench. They're trying to approximate the losses of Brown and Pope with an overall deeper roster. While again, Boston is just saying, we kind of like the roster we had. We're just going to go ahead and hang on to everybody. Give it another whirl. I know which way I like better right now. Time will ultimately tell. This second apron is a new thing. But I kind of think when you're saying you're going for it, the Celtics are going for it, and the Nuggets we're going for it, but we're going to do it in kind of a different way, and maybe we're not quite as good as we were before, but we're still going for it. Which is to say they're not really going for it. They're going for it on their terms. That's a world of difference between out and out going for it. We all know what going for it looks like. The Nuggets are going for it on their terms, which is with their young guys and not spending in the second luxury tax apron. And you look across the league, I'm not saying Klay Thompson makes all the difference in the world for Dallas, but they were just in the NBA Finals, and Kyrie and Luka are back, and Derek Lively and PJ Washington will be there for now an entire year. Could you say that Dallas is better than they were last year? I think you could. I think Oklahoma City, without question, is better than they were last year. They're going to be better than they were last year just simply by going through last year. Right? Chet's got a little bit more seasoning. Shea's got a little bit more seasoning. Jalen has a little more seasoning. And then they add Caruso and Hartenstein. And Minnesota, who isn't losing anybody, the best that I've seen, has a better draft than the Denver Nuggets because they get Terrence Shannon and Rob Dillingham. That's how small the margins are. And the Nuggets are slipping in those margins. And you look at it and you say, could they be the fourth best team in the West going into next year? And how high can your hopes be of a title when you're the fourth best team in your own conference? We'll see what else happens. Westbrook, do you get a backup big? Because what would be the worst decision is bringing back DeAndre Jordan so he can organize funtivities for the team. Like, that's what the Nuggets have done. They lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and they brought back DeAndre Jordan. How's that sit with you, Nuggets fans? You feel like this team's moving the needle in the right direction? A lot of offseason to go. Not off to a good start. But I do like Russell Westbrook as long as his addition is kept in the right context. Now to the other team that calls Ball Arena home. Here's story number 3.
Chris Letang. Now McCarr for Drouin. He's got a move towards the net. Drouin! He scores! How you, Drouin?
Altitude radio on the call while Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, to be fair, did not seem to be in any mood to give the Nuggets a hometown discount. Boy, did Jonathan Drouin do the Avs a solid. Everything they are currently dealing with Gabriel Landeskog and Valeri Nichushkin, and they get back Jonathan Drouin on a 1-year reported $2.5 million deal. A ton of respect to Jonathan Drouin because he did the Avs a solid. This doesn't really go to Chris McFarland. This is Jonathan Drouin. I promise you he could have gotten a more lucrative, longer-term deal somewhere else. I promise you he could have off the season he just had. But the fact that he's willing to not tie up the Avs with a multiple year extension and to take a deal that currently fits into their salary cap, even with the Landeskog and Nichushkin contracts. Few more people should buy his sweater is what I'm saying, because this is a guy showing that he wants to be somewhere above money. Like, this is Durant choosing the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I think that the Avs maybe could have replaced him with a Jeff Skinner or somebody else, because they've done this before with these guys that they buy low on and kind of rehab their image. But hey, if you don't even have to venture out there, if you could just keep the guy that you just saw was productive and your MVP loves him, you do that. So that was good. Losing Sean Walker today to the Carolina Hurricanes, but getting back Calvin DeHaan to be a third pairing defenseman. They bring back Jacob McDonald. Duhaime is gone, but Kiviranta is back. A lot of moves, none of them major from the Colorado Avalanche. Durant, obviously the biggest move. In the wash, I would say that the Avs had a good day. But all of this is secondary to the decisions that lay ahead of them. With Landeskog, with Nichushkin. Okay, because as much as you like Jonathan Drouin coming back to Colorado, if Landeskog doesn't come back, or Valeri Nichushkin, they have to eat all of that money and just release him or whatever they're not going to win a Stanley Cup. Jonathan Drouin is not going to help them win a Stanley Cup. They need to figure out Landeskog and Nichushkin. But for what Chris McFarland could take care of today, what the Avalanche could take care of today, I think you look at all of these flurry of moves that they've made, and you say, yeah, the Avalanche outside of Nichushkin, right, setting him aside, I think you could say the Avs are just as good as they were last year. They didn't lose anything today. But, again, Landeskog, Nichushkin, biggest things out there. Need to figure those out before I can properly assess who the Colorado Avalanche will be and their chances in not only the Central Division, but the West and the NHL as a whole. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Those Goat of Goats polls will be posted here shortly. It's Gretzky against Ali. Got a couple of texts in on that subject. Caitlin Clark was in action. It was the GOAT versus the Rook as it was being billed. Talk about that. Still much more. Drive Time Sports on this Monday coming up next. The best pro rodeo cowboys and cowgirls from the U.S. and Canadian circuits, plus national champions from Mexico, are coming to Colorado Springs July 9th through the 13th. And with over $1 million in payouts, they'll be riding to win. This is where champions and careers are made. The speed, the excitement, there's no better place to be than the NFR Open at the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo. Get your tickets now at pikespeakorbust.org. To the text line, want to hit on a couple of texts. Tom says, how does Jonathan Drouin give the Avs a hometown discount and the captain, who is not producing or playing, continue to sit on the sidelines and collect big money? You bring up a valid question. I am all about the Avalanche hanging on for as long as they have, waiting for Gabriel Landeskog. Okay, I get it. I know I'm not advocating for them to cut him at any point over the last couple of years. But Tom brings up a valid question. Could they not have asked Gabriel Landeskog to restructure his contract? Freed up some money? I think, but I will say this. I think they're at that point. Right? Whether they should have done it before or not, we can argue about that. But the fact of the matter is, it's here. They need cap relief. They have like $300,000, I think Frank Cervalli tweeted out today, NHL Insider. Like, they need the relief. Okay? And either they get it by offloading Valeri Nichushkin, which they're going to have to eat some of his salary, or Gabriel Landeskog restructures his deal. But here's the other part, too, that it not really in defense of Gabriel Landeskog, but, you know, with Landeskog, they can utilize LTIR money. So I think probably that's the reason why they haven't broached the subject, because they can essentially spend his contract. Now, when he gets back, if they have that committed, it creates some issues. But they have used LTIR money. So even though it's not Landeskog saying, here, I'll restructure my deal to free up cap space, the NHL has that LTIR loophole that the Vegas Golden Knights love so much. And they have used it a little bit to help afford some of the moves they've made over the last couple of years. But if he's going to play, that option is out the window. Right? If he plays for his contract. So that money is not available to the Avs to use. So that's another layer to what's going on with the Colorado Avalanche is they need relief. To set aside whether Landeskog, what kind of a player Gabriel Landeskog will be when he comes back, or whether Valeri Nichushkin can be on this roster. If they want any ability to make a move at the deadline, they're going to have to recoup money from one of them. If Gabriel Landeskog is ready to come back, I think I know where they're going to recoup that money from. And it's not Gabriel Landeskog. So that's the reason. Is because LTIR allows them to essentially use Gabriel Landeskog's money against the cap to go out and get other players. But that's what they got. That's what they got to figure out. And then you throw in the, can Valeri Nichushkin walk back into that dressing room after what he's done to this team the last 2 years? So, good day for the Avs, but they haven't addressed all of their issues. On the Nuggets, Steve G. First, he says they're going for it like the Cowboys are. Pretty good. Kind of feels that way, right? But says you're talking about a billionaire owner. I'd be saying do what you have to and screw that second level penalty. From what I understand about Stan Kroenke is that in the past, if the front office can sell him on the idea that they can be a championship team, right? This was the first apron stuff. He'll spend the money. Okay, his whole thing is the ROI. If you give this money to this guy and put us over this threshold that I'm going to be paying dollar for dollar, $2 for every $1, all this kind of stuff, how close can we be to a title? How confident are you that we can win a title? So I don't know if the second apron is just a non-negotiable. I don't know if Calvin Booth didn't make a compelling enough argument. I don't know that Calvin Booth made an argument. Seems like at the very least, the Nuggets had their number. Or KCP had his. They weren't the same number, and KCP went to Orlando. I did see and hear that the Nuggets tried, but how much did you try? And then, of course, there is the old phrase spoken by a wise little green man: do or do not. There is no try. Fact of the matter is the Denver Nuggets do not have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope right now. That's the bottom line. How hard they tried, doesn't matter. Really, doesn't matter how much the Nuggets tried. The fact of the matter is they don't have him. That's all you care about. How many years did the Nuggets try? Like, Josh Kroenke tried to land LeBron. You remember that, right? Josh Kroenke tried to land LeBron in Denver. Guess what? LeBron's not in Denver. Isn't that what's most important? And hey, maybe you don't even want him there, but the Nuggets tried. This is before he went to LA, they tried. Didn't work. That's really what matters in the end. And but as an aside, I really think that if all things were equal, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would be back in Denver. Maybe I don't know him as well as I think I do. I kind of felt to me like that. If everything is equal, I'll go back to Denver. Something wasn't equal. And that's why now he's in Orlando. And the Nuggets' big answer is to, bring in Russell Westbrook. I like what Russell Westbrook for this Nuggets second unit. Just don't tell me that he's a replacement for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And again, you don't have to look that far. Look at what the Avs did last year. They tried to do this. Okay, we can't afford the guy, so we're going to get Jonathan Drouin for next to nothing, and we're going to get Ryan Johansson for next to nothing, and we'll get Colton, and we'll get Wood, and we'll just, approximate. And it didn't work. And they had to go out and get Casey Middlestat. They had to do it properly and not try to thrift shop. Can't imagine the Nuggets aren't in the same boat. Our GOAT of GOATs polls are up on our social media platforms. Today, it's Gretzky versus Ali in our first semifinal. Tomorrow will be Jordan and Tiger Woods. And my thought on the matchup is, look, if you're talking about a more impactful human being, if you're talking about someone who went beyond the borders of his sport to be a significant figure in American history to some degree, then then Ali's your guy. Then Ali's your guy. But we're talking about the best resumes, the most dominant athletes in the history of sports, with Gretzky, with Woods, with Jordan. And I think that's what I would like to hang my hat on for the athletes I'm going to vote through at this stage. And Wayne Gretzky's numbers are just like, they're hard to understand. They're hard to understand how a guy was not only that much better than everyone he played with, but the fact that so many of his marks still hold to this day and are under no threat of being toppled. The goals record, maybe. I mean, Ovi's going to go out on the ice in a walker or a wheelchair to try and break that record. He's not leaving without breaking that record. But that's the goals. That's half of it. Ryan texts this in. Gretzky, if he did not score a single goal, not one, in his entire career, his assists alone would make him the all-time leading scorer in NHL history. That's insane. That's worth considering a guy above Muhammad Ali, Tiger Woods, and Michael Jordan. Ryan thinks that's why Wayne Gretzky's going to win, or at least why he may be pushing for Wayne Gretzky to win. We'll see. But at this point, it's just Gretzky, Jordan, Woods. These are the GOAT of GOATs. And Ali should be right up there with them, but ultimately I'm voting Gretzky. That's what I'm doing. Take your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. Take a break, come back. Do want to talk a little Caitlin Clark, see if there are any other free agent moves that I neglected to mention. We're just getting started, so there's more, even though it feels like everybody is now done. Everybody's been signed. DeMar DeRozan, still, he's out there. So any up-to-date information, I'll be sure to bring you before we part ways for the evening, and I'll take your thoughts as well next on Extra Sports 1300.
11 breaking weather team at KKTV News. Here's your certified most accurate forecast.
The Rocky Mountain State Games is Colorado's largest sports festival with over 12,000 athletes competing in nearly 40 different sports. Registration open now for athletes of all ages and skill levels. Learn more at RockyMountainStateGames.org. Just the sports calendar is getting a little bit lighter these days, and I am I don't want to say pleased to report. Just not getting hooked into baseball. It's not. A lot of games on yesterday. Nope. Sorry. The WNBA has provided some nice viewing of sports this time of year. So, I got other stuff I got to do, and this allows me to, one of the few shows that I actually watch, like week in, week out, is The Boys. So less sports on TV means I have time to watch The Boys, which has been really good. And then yesterday, I watched Memento, one of Christopher Nolan's first movies. I believe it was his first major movie. Maybe there's some earlier ones that I am not familiar with. I forgot how good that movie was. Oh, that movie was so good. So I watched Memento yesterday. But before that, I watched The GOAT versus The Rook. That's how the Phoenix Mercury described it when the WNBA schedule came out. Caitlin Clark versus Diana Taurasi yesterday. Phoenix had control of the game. They were up by 15 at one point. Caitlin Clark struggling from long range. She is one of the only basketball players. And again, this cuts to the heart of why she is so popular. Okay, forget all that other lowest common denominator crap that people want to throw out there. What she did in yesterday's game is why she is such a phenomenon. Okay? She hasn't gotten going. She's like 1 for 6 or something from deep. Fever struggling. They were down 15 at one point. Caitlin Clark just basically says, screw it. Takes two or three dribbles inside the half-court line and chucks up a three. Buries it. By almost anybody save for Steph Curry's measure, that's the kind of shot you take as a heat check. And she took it to get herself going. And she buries it. Next time down the floor, great backdoor pass for an easy layup. And then it just snowballed. And then the Fever end up rallying from 15 points down. They beat Phoenix. And lo and behold, the Rook outperforms the GOAT. Caitlin Clark yesterday ended up with a stat line. And while they didn't, and this is what you always lament about these big basketball matchups, they never guard anybody. Like Embiid versus Jokic. Well, just kidding. Aaron Gordon's guarding Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris is going to guard Nikola Jokic. And oh, by the way, Joel Embiid's not even playing. So, but these guys, they never guard each other. And you thought maybe Diana Taurasi and Caitlin Clark? Nope, never. I don't think there was one time where they guarded each other. So, like, just give us one. One time down the floor, each way. Clark versus Taurasi, flip it around. Never got that yesterday, but Caitlin Clark ended with 15 points, 12 assists, and 9 rebounds. Diana Taurasi, 19 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. And oh, by the way, Caitlin Clark was ill. We got our first flu game from Caitlin Clark. I don't know if she had the flu, but her head coach said she was under the weather, and she outperformed the greatest women's basketball player of all time. Now, Diana Taurasi's not at the height of her powers, but She is on the Olympic team, if I'm not mistaken, yes? Diana Taurasi's on the Olympic team? And Caitlin Clark just outplayed her head-to-head? Caitlin Clark's having a better season than Diana Taurasi, you say? I get it. It's about experience, right? Kind of hard to argue if the real reason why Caitlin Clark is not on the Olympic roster is because of her lack of experience, even if she right now is a better player than Diana Taurasi is. Can't argue. No, I have more experience, which I am fine with, but I still do not fully believe that that is the only reason, if it is even the number one reason. And coming up, we have the WNBA All-Star Game, which both Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark will team up to take on Team USA. So that'll be good. But Caitlin Clark being the catalyst and just pulling up from a ridiculous range just to get herself going. You know, most basketball players we talk about, you know, they need to, you know, get to the free throw line to get in rhythm, right? See a couple shots go down from, get a couple of freebies. That'll get you going. Caitlin Clark's like, no, logo 3. This is why she is so popular. Just in case. But you know what? I don't want to keep pushing that. I don't want to keep bringing that up because you know what yesterday was devoid of? Drama, or at least Caitlin Clark related drama. There was some pushing and shoving going on between the Mercury and Fever. But you know who wasn't involved in it? Taurasi or Clark. They were just laughing at what was going on. Nobody's hitting anybody in the head. Nobody's refusing to answer Caitlin Clark questions. In fact, Diana Taurasi could not have been more complimentary. Could not have been more complimentary. So, and I took her comments during the women's Final Four of like, she's just being a competitor. Little bit of showbiz, little bit of that competitor. And Diana Taurasi, leading up to this game and after this game, had nothing but the best things to say about Caitlin Clark. That should exist throughout the league, right? I'm all for rivalries, but come on. What she's doing for the league, give her flowers. So Fever, get that done. I'm telling you, don't count out the Fever just yet. They play the Aces. That'll be a good one. Definitely not going to get Asia Wilson on Caitlin Clark or vice versa. Maybe there was a chance that Diana Taurasi and Caitlin Clark would guard each other. There is zero chance Asia Wilson and Caitlin Clark would end up guarding each other, but that's going to be a fun one. That's on ESPN, yeah? That is tomorrow night. Vegas and Indiana. Of course, tonight is either one of the greatest victories outside of World Cup play in U.S. men's soccer history, or it will be the end of the Greg Berhalter tenure as head coach. And when it's that kind of stakes, I very much think that it is worth watching. So that one coming up. And Uruguay, all this talk, oh, Uruguay's going to sit dudes. No, they're not. No, they're not. Their coach came out the other day and said that they haven't proven anything with the results that they've gotten so far in group play. And they actually have a chance to play a better team in the United States. They're not resting his guys. And the early look at the lineup says Uruguay's not resting anybody. Tim Weah out for this match with the red card he picked up. So, again, greatest non-World Cup win maybe in the history of U.S. men's soccer, or the end of the Greg Berhalter era. I call that a win-win for U.S. soccer fans. Let's see. Chris McFarland did mention that Logan O'Connor is expected to be 100% for training camp, which is good because he is, in losing Duhaime and Trennan, having Logan O'Connor back would be important to the depth of the Colorado Avalanche. And how about what the Avs did in the draft? I know the NHL draft not on anybody's must-watch sports list. I've joked around for a long time that the Rockies in one draft should just take pitchers. Like, that's it. Just all pitchers. I want the Rockies to have one draft class, which is all pitchers. The Avs equivalent of that might be goaltenders, and they very nearly pulled it off. How many goaltenders did they take this weekend? Like 8 goaltenders? And they got Matt Davis an invite to development camp. They didn't even have to draft the hero of the Denver Pioneers. They just brought him to their development camp. So there's another goalie that they've added. But this guy that they got when they traded back out of the first round, ended up getting Nabokov. Is he related to Evgeny? Right? That was the Sharks goaltender, right? Back in the day. Anyway, so they get this guy who is on the last year of his deal with the KHL and has been terrific. And what you have to understand, when these guys come over from Europe, regardless of what age they are playing in a league with grown men, right? You could say that the NHL is a higher level than the KHL, and you'd be 100% right. But when you compare it to these guys coming out of juniors or even coming out of college hockey, it's like in the KHL in Europe, like 35-year-old men that they're going up against on a nightly basis. And this dude was terrific in the KHL last year. Last year of his deal over there. So, Alexander Georgiev, we were all pleased with the way you played in the playoffs. Avs bowing out of the postseason was not on you. Need to see it for a whole season. 82 and then the playoffs. Because they got 36 different goalies that they added just this weekend that could be potentially gunning for Alexander Georgiev's job. All right. I think that is it. Let's see. Clay went to Dallas. Boston re-upped Derek White and Jason Tatum. Oklahoma City adds Isaiah Hartenstein after they acquired Alex Caruso. No Russell Westbrook in Denver yet. Here's something that I've been pondering, and I'm going to get into it tomorrow. Brian Windhorst said something interesting yesterday on ESPN's free agency special. I wasn't even thinking of it because a few days ago, I saw a tweet from Shams that said that the Nuggets are getting ready to put a $200+ million extension in front of Jamal Murray. It's expected to be signed, and away we go. Brian Windhorst, the artist that brought you the what's going on in Utah fingers, just drops something yesterday and immediately moves on. He says, why hasn't Jamal Murray signed his extension yet? And then they just moved on with the broadcast. Like, wait a minute. The guy that does the Utah Jazz, what's going on in Utah fingers, just casually drops in that he's somewhat surprised that Jamal Murray has not inked an extension and nobody decides to challenge him on set and say, what do you mean by that? So I've been mulling it throughout the day. I'll give you my thought on it tomorrow, and we'll see if the Nuggets add anything to the roster. Today was about what they're losing. And a solid day for the Avs, but still their two biggest pieces of business still sitting out there and probably won't be settled this summer. So a lot more to talk about tomorrow, that's for sure. I will leave you with this thought or a question. Is arthritic joint pain keeping you from doing the things you love? You know, it's summer. You should be out and about doing stuff. Hiking, biking, walking, jogging, whatever it is. But maybe that joint pain, you're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to go out and do it. That's not good. And QC Kinetics feels like they have a way to help you with that joint pain. It's new cellular therapies that can get you lasting relief. They're helping patients like you every day, thousands of them across the country and here locally. They're the nation's leader in advanced regenerative medicine. These are cutting-edge treatments that accelerate your body's own healing properties. This isn't drugs. This isn't surgery. Those two things have their drawbacks for sure. And with QC Kinetics treatments, there is no downtime. No downtime. The local medical professionals at QC Kinetics are ready to help you get your life back with regenerative, restorative cellular treatments for your achy joints. Call for a free consultation now. 719-347-1988. 719-347-1988. QC Kinetics. It's the future of medicine, people. 719-347-1988. It has been my pleasure to serve you. Appreciate the conversation. Vote Gretzky or Ali on our social media platforms. Tomorrow will be MJ versus Tiger and more NHL and NBA free agency conversation.